Welcome back to Virtual School Assembly. Today I'm pleased to introduce Mark Black. He is a heart and double lung transplant recipient, turned four-time marathon runner. A resilience expert, coach, and author, Mark helps people thrive in challenging times. His programs provide the tools to transform your adversity into your advantage. Today, Mark's going to talk to us a little bit about how to choose to do difficult things. Welcome to our stage, Mark.
Thanks for having me, Tyler. Appreciate it. And hi, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Look, it's a challenging time, right? And so let's just get that out of the way. We're all going through difficult situations to different degrees, but we're all dealing with challenges. And whenever I'm at a school sharing my story, that's how I start, by helping people to understand that I know that as I share my story of challenge, that you have challenges too, right? That everybody has stuff that they have to deal with. And my invitation to you is that whatever the challenging things are that you are forced to do, you can get through those more easily by having the right mindset around it. And part of the right mindset is understanding that it's actually our challenges and our struggles that make us better. It's actually our challenges and our struggles that help us to grow. The reason you are who you are today is largely because of what you've been through and not necessarily because of your successes. So what I want to challenge you to do today is to do tough stuff. Now, in some cases, that's going to mean doing the things that you're forced to do because life throws things at you, like we're all dealing with right now. Probably a lot of you are kind of challenged by what's going on right now. You might have thought it was really fun to not be in school for like a week, but it gets pretty old pretty fast. And so we have to figure out how to cope with this new challenging situation. And I think the first step in that process is to just accept the things about it that we can't control. So in my story, I was born with a heart condition. I had open heart surgeries when I was a day old. But my biggest challenges really didn't come until I was 24. And my heart began to fail really badly very quickly. And in the span of about 3 months, I lost a third of my body weight. I got really sick. I was tired all the time. And a doctor, after running a bunch of tests, told me, Mark, you need a heart and 2 new lungs, and you need them now. And in an instant, my whole life changed. In some ways similar to how all of your lives have changed 3 or 4 weeks ago when we were all told we can't go outside anymore, right? Or at least not around other people. And so how do you handle that kind of shock to your system? How do you handle that kind of dramatic change quickly and efficiently and effectively? And I think the first step is to just acknowledge that it's hard and accept the parts of it you can't fix. See, what a lot of us do is something difficult happens and we want to fight back, or we want to get angry and we want to get frustrated and we want to talk about why it's not fair. And while all of that is true, none of this is fair, none of us would have asked for this, that feeling that way and being angry about it doesn't fix it, right? So when I got really sick, I was put in the hospital, and I would end up being in that hospital for 6 months. And I remember feeling really angry. And then one day, about 3 weeks into my stay in the hospital, my mom came into my room and she said, Mark, look, you have to make a choice. You can choose to feel sorry for yourself if you want to. I understand why you feel that way. I get it. But how is that going to help you? Like, if you keep thinking the way you're thinking and feeling the way you're feeling, where will you be next month or in 3 months? Well, the answer is you're probably going to be more tired, more angry, more frustrated, more bitter than you are right now. So you go ahead and you feel as sorry for yourself as you need to feel for as long as you feel. But if I were you, I would start trying to focus on the things that I control and on the things that are going right instead of the things I don't control and the things that are going wrong. Now, how many of us would say that that's pretty solid advice? And probably a lot of you listening are like me, and when mom and dad give me advice and I don't want to listen, I don't listen. So I heard what she said, but I didn't listen. In fact, I think I said, whatever, mom, you don't get it. You're not the one stuck in this room. You don't know how I feel. It was all about me. I had no empathy for her at all. And it took about 3 weeks for me to kind of figure out what she was trying to teach me. And one of the things I want to teach you today, which is life is going to be hard sometimes. That's how it works. And in fact, I would say to you that if your life is super easy all the time, then you're probably missing out on opportunities because you're not pushing yourself hard enough. Sometimes the difficult things will be by choice, and sometimes they won't. But the sooner we can accept the parts of those things that we can't control and let go of them, so that we can focus on the things that we do control and start doing our best with those, the better our life becomes. So all of us have this gap between an event and a response, right? Something happens, we don't like it, we get angry, right? And then eventually there's a second response. And that's where we decide the meaning behind what happens. And it's in deciding the meaning of what happens that determines how your life will go ultimately, and also how you handle that situation. So for example, I'm told I'm going to be in the hospital, I'm angry. It's normal. But then I have to decide, well, what does this situation mean in my life? Does it mean life isn't fair? Does it mean I somehow have worse luck than everybody else? Does it mean that I'm not going to get to live the life I want to live, or I'm not going to get to do the things I want to do? Or are there opportunities being presented to me in this challenging situation? Are there things about this that are good? Not that it means it's all good, not that it means it's not still hard, but are there things here that I can learn? And what I figured out through the course of that journey of 6 months in the hospital was that there were a lot of things there that were opportunities. There were lots of positive things in that difficult experience, but I could only see them when I wasn't so busy focused on what I was losing, but instead focused on what I was gaining. And it takes a shift in your head. And so right now, as you're sitting at home, can you think about the things that are maybe possible now that weren't possible before? Can you think about ways that you can take advantage of the situation that maybe weren't there before? I mean, you've got a lot more time, for example, than you've ever had before, a lot more free time than you've ever had before. How are you using that time? Right? Are you using it to learn something you're really excited about learning, or try a new project, or learn how to play an instrument, or start making videos on YouTube, or like there are so many things you can be doing with this time? Or are you just passing the time? Are you just waking up and getting on your phone or your tablet and scrolling all day long? It's a choice, right? And your experience of this challenge will be very different depending on what you decide it means and how you decide to use it. And so as we learn to accept the parts of it we can't control, it allows us the time and energy to focus on what we can control, and how we use that time and energy will determine the quality of the experience. The the other thing that I want you to think about is and this served me really, really well when I was stuck in the hospital, is to do what I call live today. I have this bracelet that I wear every day. I don't know if you can see it, but it says live today on it. And what I mean by that is exactly what it says. It's work hard at living this day and only this day as best as you can. And try and work to not allow your brain to run wild with all of the things that might happen in the future. I meet so many people who are living their life for some other day, right? They're going to go do this thing someday. They're going to do that thing someday. And they're worried about what might happen in the future. And they're worried about what they screwed up yesterday that they can't fix anymore. And I was in the hospital for 6 months because I was at very high risk for something called sudden cardiac death, which means your heart can stop at any second. And even now, I'm 17 years with my new heart and lungs, which is wonderful. But these organs have a shelf life, and we don't know exactly how long it is, but we know statistically that over half of the people who have had my transplant die in the first 5 years, and probably about 3/4 of them are dead within the first 10 years, and I'm at year 17, which means I'm incredibly fortunate, number one, but number two, it means eventually those organs are going to start to fail. It means that there's a very good chance that at 41, I'm not going to see 50. And so I could spend a lot of time worrying about when that's going to happen, when things are going to start to go wrong. Just like we could all spend a lot of time right now worrying about the what ifs of this situation. Like, am I going to get to go back to school in the fall or not? Or is school going to look really different? Am I going to get to go back and hang out with my friends? Like, what is the world going to look like in 6 months? And the truth is, none of us knows. Even the people that are out there saying they know are really just guessing with more information than some of us have, but they don't know. And so how do we deal with that? Well, to me, the way that I've dealt with all of the unknowns in my life is to remember to live today. To say, I'm going to live this day as best as I can. And if I do that over and over and over again, then I create a pretty great life. Now, that doesn't mean live every day like it's your last day. You've probably heard people say that before. It makes a really nice motivational poster. But it's a pretty crummy way to live. Because just think about it for a minute. Like if this were you're definitely your last day, what would you do? I don't know about you, but I'd be probably on my phone the whole time, like calling and texting friends and family, and we'd have a lot of emotional conversations and a lot of I love yous and I'll miss you and all that stuff, which makes sense one time, right? Do that over and over again for like 2 weeks with your friends and see how many of them answer your phone calls anymore or your texts anymore, right? Like you can't cram. You've probably seen movies and so you can't cram like a whole bucket list, a whole life worth of experiences into a couple of days or a day. So it's not about living every day like it's your last day. It's just about being alive every day. And at a time like this, that's incredibly important because it's so easy to just exist right now, right? It's so easy to just kind of wake up at noon and flop on the couch and watch Netflix or scroll on your phone. And pretty soon it's bedtime and you go back to bed and you do the same thing all over again. And months are going to go by and you'll have nothing to show for it. And it's not that we have to be massive productivity machines and go and create all kinds of amazing stuff. But in the time that you do have, what if you spent a little bit of it doing something constructive, whether that was, just writing or learning to play an instrument or getting better at an instrument you already play or, learning about how to make videos on YouTube or whatever you're passionate about or interested in. But the point is it'll do two things. Number one, it gets you active and moving. And number two, it helps distract you from some of the things that you could choose to worry about if you choose to. So living today was a strategy in my life that served me really well while I was in the hospital, and frankly continues to serve me all the time. I lately especially, my business is speaking at live events with a lot of people. Well, guess what? Those are not happening now, and they're not going to happen for a while. And so it would be really easy to say, oh my gosh, my whole world had just disappeared. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I don't know what I'm going to do to make money. I don't know, like all of that stuff. But I've lived long enough and had enough experiences to know that I don't control all of that stuff. What I control is right here and right now. And so every day right now, I'm trying to do my best to stick to routines and habits that have worked for me already in the past and not get away from those just because the environment is different. And to do something each day that I feel has some value. So today I get to do this. This has value, I hope. I feel like it does. And so it's going to be a good day because I did something that added value to the world. And that's really what living today is all about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you a few questions about this, Mark. I love your advice, live today. And in fact, I have a testimonial that just walked by me down in the basement. My 14-year-old has done exactly what you suggested. Try a few new things, get better at what you're doing. And just today, he's worked on building a fort outside. He practiced his musical instrument. He bugged me about doing things on YouTube because I need to help him with that. And he is thriving during this time because he's trying to live today. He's trying to do new things. And, it is hard not seeing his friends. And so he's hopping on for chat and things like that. But I know that what you're saying works because I've seen that with him. He has grown so much just in these last few weeks. It's been phenomenal.
Yeah,
now,
it's pretty awesome.
I want to take you back in time. And I know you said, we don't need to get emotional about this. We don't need to live like it's our last day. But I have a personal connection to your story because one of my dearest friends had a heart condition. And about the time that you had your heart replaced, that's when he passed away. So he didn't have these extra 17 years. We're the same age. And so it's really easy for me to visualize that. But he also followed your advice. Now, he didn't live like every day was his last day, although he knew his days were numbered. But what he did was he put a priority on relationships. He wasn't always building things. He wasn't always trying new projects, but he was checking in. And I wanted to push back on that a little bit because you said I'd be texting, I'd be phone calling and things like that. And I think the reason we do that is because at the end of the day, that matters more than being super productive and doing those things. Do you have a few thoughts about that? I mean, as someone who has lived kind of on borrowed time, how do you prioritize things?
It's a constant struggle, right? I think anytime we decide that we have some principles and values that we want to live up to, we have to be aware enough of ourselves to know that we're going to fail at living up to them a lot of the time. And so, yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, um, all that really matters in my experience was the lives that you touched, the difference you made, the people that you love. Like that's all that counts. Everything else is very superficial. And so the thing that I cherished most about my time in the hospital was the fact that I got to have really good conversations or a lot of really quality time with my parents, for example, who were great parents all along, but we were just busy and we were doing other things. And they had three other kids to raise, and and I totally relate now because we have three kids and it's busy and it's crazy.
Mhm.
But you try to remember to sit down and have those meaningful conversations. Not that they have to be 3 hours long either. Sometimes they're 5 minutes, but you're absolutely right. The relationships that you have, how you treat other people, is probably the most important thing. And so I'm a big believer in, having goals and making a contribution in the world, but a lot of that contribution, all of that contribution is about the impact it has on other people. And so if you're doing things at the sacrifice of relationships, then you're missing the point.
Fantastic. I want to talk a little bit about just your health condition because you've done some pretty incredible things given your medical history and everything like that. Can you talk a little bit about running marathons? I mean, I am a runner, so I know how hard it is to run a marathon when you're healthy and things like that. What was your experience training for? And I'm particularly interested in that first one. After all your medical procedures and everything, how did you even come up with the idea, I'm going to do this? And then how did you train for it?
Yeah, so I was sitting in the ICU after the transplant. It was like 6 or 7 days after the transplant, and it was the first time that I became aware of the strong, steady heartbeat in my chest. My heart had always had um, rhythm abnormalities, so it never beat on a regular rhythm, and it was a faint kind of beat as well because it wasn't working properly. And so all of a sudden, I had this really strong, steady, rhythmic heartbeat in my chest, and I realized, that's like somebody else's heart is beating in my chest right now, and the power of that, not just from a physical perspective, but what it represented in terms of possibility, kind of hit me for the first time. Like, I
Mm.
wonder what's possible now. I knew what was possible with my old organs. This, if things go well, opens up a whole new world of possibility. And for whatever reason, I really don't know where it came from. I thought, well, if I could run a marathon, it would mean I could do pretty much anything I put my mind to, because I couldn't at that point climb a flight. Well, prior to that, prior to the surgery, I couldn't climb a flight of stairs without getting out of breath.
Mhm.
When I was thinking about this sitting in the hospital, I had not walked on my own yet. I was still attached to wires and I had scars, and it was great. In fact, I've got a picture that I can send you if you want to add it in post production. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I hadn't even walked on my own yet. So it was not a realistic goal by any stretch of the imagination, but it was more about a vision of something to work toward. And so that vision carried me through the months and months and months of rehab, of like going to the hospital gym 4 days a week to build back muscle mass and some strength, and then to start to learn to jog, and then to start to learn to run, and to run a 5K race and a 10K race and a half marathon. And it took 2.5 years to get to the marathon. But it was a great lesson in two respects. One, in teaching me that we are all, every single one of you listening, capable of more than we think we are. And that's just human nature. We just put limits on ourselves. It's what we do. And and number two, what can happen when you make small, consistent effort over time, right? Like, reading 10 pages of a book today, for example, seems like insignificant. But if you read 10 pages of a book every single day of your life, by the time you're done, you're going to have read thousands of books where everybody else who didn't read 10 pages a day read nothing. And that will enrich your life in incredible ways. If you practice your sport or your instrument for just 20 minutes a day, you're going to be so much better at the end of the year than if you hadn't done that. And that's one of the great lessons of the marathon is, at first you feel like you're not making any progress. You can be, you run for an hour and you still got more than half of the race to do. But then at some point you kind of go, wait a minute, I've been running for 3 or 4 hours. I've run like 15 or 20 miles or something like that. And it also teaches you about what happens when you get to that stage. And we all get there in every goal that we pursue, which is that point's usually somewhere around 3/4 of the way, where the start is a long ways away, but the finish line is still so far away that you feel like you're in limbo. You've been working really hard for a long time, and so you're tired and you want to quit, but the end is not there yet. And you have to make that decision about if you're going to keep going, even when it's hard, even when it's difficult. And I always say, and I'm not the first one to say it, you run a marathon the first 3/4 with your legs and the last quarter with your heart, because it's that last quarter where your legs don't want to go anymore and you have to will yourself to keep moving forward in order to get there. And I think that life works exactly the same way.
Awesome. Now, given that you've done 4 marathons, I have a question, and I don't know what the right answer is to this one, because as you've been talking, I've been thinking, how would I answer this next question? And I don't know the answer. So you might not either. But right now, in living today and trying to do new things and choosing to find opportunities, that's what everyone is doing right now. We're forced to, whether we want to or not. But when we set that side by side with what you just talked about doing big goals, setting a huge goal, something that would take a long time to accomplish, is now a good time to be setting those goals? Like, for example, do you have a huge goal right now that you're working towards, or are you focusing on the little things?
I would say both and rather than either or. And this is just my perspective. I think this is an overwhelming time in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so to have this big, huge goal that you're working toward can be an overwhelming thing at the best of times as well. And
Okay.
so if those two things come together in a negative way for you, then it can feel really overwhelming and disempowering, which is exactly the opposite of why you want to have a big goal in the first place, right?
Right.
So if that's what it makes you feel, then it's maybe better to put it, to the side for now. And but either way, the reason that I have a big goal, and so one of my big goals, for example, is to reach a million people with the lessons that I've learned and the tools and strategies I teach. I will continue to work towards that goal, knowing that right now that the speed at which I'm able to achieve it has been slowed down dramatically, because typically I'll get to speak to 30 plus thousand students in a year. This year that number is going to be far, far lower for obvious reasons. But it doesn't mean the goal isn't still real, and that maybe it's going to force me to find different ways like this to reach that goal in an alternative way. So I think it's about having a big vision that keeps you driven, and then breaking it down to have very small actionable steps that day by day you know what to do, so that you get, one step closer. I always say that running a marathon sounds hard until you really understand that it's putting one foot in front of the other until you get there. And we all have the ability to put one foot in front of the other.
Right. Awesome. Okay. Just one more question, and then we'll wrap up. You mentioned earlier that with your heart and your lung transplant, you were curious about what you're capable of. I'm curious about what happened prior to that. As you were growing up through your childhood, having a heart that wasn't working at full capacity or lungs at full capacity, how did that affect how people treated you, or what you felt you were capable of doing during that time?
Yeah, so in addition to those two things, I'm also very small, and I was always the smallest kid in my like. So now, as a quote unquote full grown adult, I'm 4 feet 11 inches tall. So I was always the shortest kid in my class, and so just from a physical ability perspective, regardless of my health, I was not able to run as fast or jump as far or all those things. Having said that, I played at a competitive level in soccer and basketball until I was 13. And I did that largely because I had amazing parents. My parents are both phys ed teachers by trade, and they made what I consider to be a crucial life decision for me when I was too young to make it for myself, which was that they would raise me like they would raise any other kid, and they would treat me like any other kid. And so, while it would have been tempting and easy to try and really shelter me and protect me because I was, you know, physically vulnerable, they chose to allow me to push myself as far as I wanted to push myself, and to metaphorically fall down and scrape my knees, right? To fail and to try new things and to compete against bigger kids and all of those things, and to fail a lot. And I think that lesson of learning that failure isn't fatal, that you won't die from not succeeding, and that it's okay to be uncomfortable, and that's part of growing. That I was able to apply those lessons to other areas of my life when I got too sick to be able to compete in sports. So yeah, I think it's really, really important if your parents are not doing that for you, that you try and do it for yourself. That you recognize that pushing yourself a little bit and being a little uncomfortable is the best way to grow and the best way to prepare yourself for the inevitable times in your life when you're going to be uncomfortable and challenged and stretched, whether you like it or not. Um, so one weird thing, like I take cold showers regularly, and people think that sounds kind of crazy, and I do it for two reasons. One, there's some actual physiological benefits to doing that, but number two, I do it because I don't want to. And because I don't want to, and I force myself to do it anyway, I learned that being uncomfortable and doing something I don't want to do is okay, and that I'll live and I'll be all right. And next time when I do something that's uncomfortable, it won't be as scary. And so I use that often to remind myself, if you've been through that, whatever that is in your life, we've all got stuff we've been through,
Mhm.
then you can probably handle this.
Fantastic. Well, Mark, thank you for your time this morning. I love the message on living today, especially given what today is like for so many of us. If people want to learn more about you or follow you, where should I send them?
So you can find more about me and my youth programs at youthspeakermark.com. And Mark Black speaks on all of the social media platforms, Instagram, and even on TikTok, even though I'm embarrassing my daughter because I'm on there. But yeah. And we just announced on the website the other day that we're now doing virtual assemblies. So I've got my home studio set up here with the lights and the video cameras and everything. So we're ready to go. However long this goes, we're ready to be able to still get out there and reach kids, which is why I'm here today. And I thank you for the opportunity to do that, Tyler.
Thank you.